Welcome to Small Business Signals. I'm bringing you a critical playbook today because the tariff environment we're operating in right now is unlike anything we've seen in decades. If you're importing anything, raw materials, finished goods, components, your costs may have jumped dramatically, and the volatility isn't slowing down anytime soon. This episode gives you a concrete, step-by-step survival guide. Not theory, not panic. Just practical moves you can make starting this week. Here's the signal that matters most right now. Tariff levels remain 8 to 10 times higher than at the start of 2025, according to Avalara's trade analysis. Let me say that again. 8 to 10 times higher. If you were paying 5% on certain imports, you might now be looking at 40 or 50%. That's not a price adjustment. That's a complete restructuring of your cost basis. And if you haven't already adapted, your margins are bleeding. But here's what the headlines miss. This environment also creates opportunities. Businesses that move strategically right now can actually gain competitive advantage. We're going to cover exactly how to audit your exposure, communicate price increases without losing customers, and position yourself for what's coming next. Let's start with why tariffs hit small businesses so much harder than the big players. It comes down to 3 structural disadvantages we need to understand. First, we have fewer resources. Large corporations can absorb tariff costs across global operations. We can't spread that pain across multiple profit centers. Second, we have less pricing power. A major brand can raise prices and customers stay loyal. When we raise prices, customers might walk across the street to a competitor. Third, we have limited supplier networks. Big companies source from dozens of countries. Many of us rely on 1 or 2 key suppliers who might all be in tariff-affected regions. According to Altline's business financing analysis, quote, tariffs often hit small businesses harder than large corporations because they have fewer resources, less pricing power, and limited supplier networks. Hive. This isn't abstract theory. This is the structural reality we're operating in, and understanding it helps us make smarter decisions about where to focus our limited resources. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce reports that 31% of small business owners cite tariffs as a top concern for 2026. That's nearly 1 in 3 of us. And it's not just us feeling the pressure. Our customers are changing their behavior too, which affects how we need to think about pricing and value. According to NAV's research, more than 60% of Americans have already changed or plan to change their buying habits in response to higher costs from tariffs. 60%. That means your customers are actively looking for ways to spend less, substitute products, or delay purchases. That's the environment we're pricing into. Simon-Kucher's consumer research found that 29% of consumers cite tariffs specifically as a major factor shaping their spending decisions right now. So we're facing a squeeze from both directions. Our costs are rising from tariffs, and our customers are becoming more price sensitive because of those same tariffs. Now here's where it gets even more challenging. Avalara's analysis warns that tariff policies in 2026 could be just as volatile as 2025. That means you can't just adjust once and forget it. Businesses need systems to implement tariff changes quickly, because rates could shift again with little warning. This volatility actually creates a hidden challenge. Cash flow uncertainty. You might quote a project today and find your costs have jumped before you deliver. So let's get into the tactical playbook. First up, auditing your supply chain exposure. You can't fix what you haven't measured. Step 1. List every product or material you import. Pull your invoices from the last 12 months. Categorize by country of origin and current tariff rate. Step 2. Calculate your tariff exposure as a percentage of total cost of goods sold. If tariffs represent more than 5% of your COGS, you have meaningful exposure. Step 3. Identify your highest risk items. Which products have the biggest volume and the highest tariff rates? Those are your priority targets for action. Here's a move that many business owners overlook. Request quotes from alternative suppliers right now, even if you don't plan to switch immediately. Why? Because you're building optionality. If your current supplier gets hit with additional tariffs, you'll already have vetted alternatives ready to activate. Look specifically at domestic suppliers and nearshore options, meaning suppliers in Mexico, Canada, or Central America that may face lower or no tariffs. TriNet's Business Insights note, quote, "Perhaps the most significant long-term opportunity tariffs create is the push toward nearshoring, moving production or supply closer to home." Nearshoring isn't just about tariffs. It also reduces shipping times, cuts freight costs, and gives you more responsive supply chain when customer demand changes. The trade-off is often higher per unit costs. A domestic supplier might charge 20% more per unit. But if tariffs add 40% to imports, the math works. Now let's talk about the hardest part for most business owners: raising prices without losing customers. This is where communication strategy makes all the difference. Old National Bank's business advisory recommends, quote, "If you have to raise prices to combat the higher cost of goods, be upfront with your customers and explain why the change is occurring." The key word there is upfront. Don't hide price increases or hope customers won't notice. That erodes trust faster than the increase itself. Develop a price increase communication script. Lead with value, not apology. Emphasize what makes your product or service worth the investment. Instead of saying, "We're sorry, but we have to raise prices," try, "To maintain the quality you depend on, we're adjusting our pricing to reflect current supply costs." Notice the difference? One frames you as a victim. The other frames you as a business committed to quality. Same information, completely different positioning. Consider bundling products or adding service value to justify price increases. If you're raising prices, can you add an extended warranty, faster delivery, or better support? This shifts the conversation from "you're charging more for the same thing" to "you're getting more value for a slightly higher price." Very different customer psychology. Now let's address the cash flow reality. Tariffs don't just raise your costs. They create unpredictable spikes that can crush your working capital if you're not prepared. Build 3 to 6 months of cash reserves specifically earmarked for tariff volatility. This isn't your emergency fund, it's your trade policy buffer. I know building reserves feels impossible when margins are tight. Start small. Even setting aside 2% of monthly revenue creates momentum toward that target. Why cash reserves specifically? Because when tariffs spike unexpectedly, you'll get hit with customs bills you didn't budget for. Suppliers may demand faster payment. Having that buffer means you can absorb the shock without scrambling for credit, missing payroll, or making desperate decisions that hurt your business long-term. Multiple business advisors emphasize that unexpected duty increases represent one of the biggest cash flow risks for import-dependent small businesses right now. Let's talk about compliance technology. This might seem like a luxury expense, but for businesses with significant import exposure, it's becoming essential infrastructure. Platforms like Avalara automatically track and apply tariff changes across your product catalog. When rates change, your pricing updates automatically, reducing manual errors. Compliance errors are expensive. Misclassify a product, pay the wrong tariff rate, and you could face penalties plus the back taxes owed. Technology reduces that risk. The compliance burden is real. Tariff codes are complex, rates change constantly, and the paperwork requirements for imports have increased significantly under current policies. If technology isn't in your budget, at minimum designate someone on your team as your tariff specialist. Have them subscribe to trade policy updates and monitor changes weekly. Now let's flip the script and talk about opportunity. Yes, I said opportunity. This chaotic environment creates openings for small businesses willing to move strategically. The nearshoring trend accelerated by tariffs could benefit domestic small manufacturers and suppliers, according to TriNet's analysis. Customers are looking for tariff-free alternatives. If you manufacture or source domestically, this is your moment to market that advantage. Made in USA and no import tariffs are now competitive selling points, not just patriotic slogans. Even if you don't manufacture here, can you source more components domestically? Every bit of your supply chain you move closer reduces your tariff exposure and shipping volatility. Consider this: your larger competitors may be locked into overseas contracts they can't easily exit. You have the flexibility to pivot faster. That's a small business advantage. There's also an opportunity in customer communication. Businesses that are transparent about tariff impacts build trust. Those that stay silent breed suspicion about profit-taking. Send customers a brief update explaining how tariffs affect your business and what you're doing to minimize impact. Even if you're not raising prices, this builds goodwill. Frame yourself as a partner navigating these challenges together, not as a faceless business passing costs along. That relationship equity pays dividends in customer retention. Let me share a framework for thinking about your response to any tariff increase. I call it the 3 A's. Absorb, adjust, or adapt. Absorb means you eat the cost increase in your margins. This makes sense for small increases or when you're competing heavily on price and can't risk losing volume. Adjust means you pass some or all of the increase to customers through pricing. The key is how you communicate it. As we discussed earlier, lead with value. Adapt means you change your operations, new suppliers, different products, alternative materials. This takes longer but creates lasting improvement rather than just coping. Most situations call for a combination of all three. You might absorb small increases, adjust pricing for medium ones, and adapt your supply chain for the biggest exposures. Map each of your tariff-affected products to one of these 3 strategies. Having a clear plan prevents reactive decisions that hurt your business in the long run. Let's talk about negotiation, both with suppliers and customers. In volatile tariff environments, renegotiating terms becomes essential, not optional. With suppliers, ask about tariff-sharing arrangements. Some suppliers will agree to split increases rather than pass along 100%, especially if you're a loyal, consistent buyer. Request longer payment terms or volume discounts that offset some tariff costs. Get creative. Maybe you prepay for inventory in exchange for a locked-in price before tariffs increase further. With customers, especially B2B accounts, discuss tariff adjustment clauses in future contracts. These automatically adjust pricing when tariff rates change significantly. These clauses protect both parties from extreme volatility. You're not gouging customers, and you're not eating unexpected costs. The adjustment mechanism is transparent and fair. Now, I want to address something important: the political dimension. Tariff policy is politically charged, and you might be tempted to wait and see if policy changes. My recommendation: don't wait. Tariff volatility is likely regardless of who's in office. Build systems that make you resilient to policy changes in either direction. Businesses that built flexibility into their supply chains over the past 2 years are weathering this storm better than those who bet on policy reversals that never came. Your goal isn't to predict trade policy. It's to build a business that can adapt quickly to whatever policy environment emerges. That's true operational resilience. Let me also touch on industry-specific considerations. Some sectors are hit harder than others, and understanding your sector's dynamics helps you prioritize responses. Retail, manufacturing, construction, and food service typically face the highest tariff exposure because of their reliance on imported materials, products, and equipment. If you're in one of these sectors, your audit and response should be particularly thorough. The good news is that your suppliers are feeling the same pressure and may be more flexible. Service businesses generally have less direct tariff exposure, but watch your supply chain carefully. Even service businesses use equipment, technology, and materials that may be imported. Let's bring this all together with a weekly action checklist you can implement starting today. I want you to walk away from this episode with concrete next steps. Week 1. Complete your supply chain audit. List all imported products and materials, identify country of origin, and document current tariff rates for each. Week 2. Calculate your total tariff exposure as a percentage of cost of goods sold. Rank your products by tariff impact from highest to lowest. Week 3. Request quotes from at least 3 alternative suppliers for your top 3 highest tariff products. Include domestic and nearshore options. Week 4. Draft your price increase communication template and decide which products need adjustment. Assign each product to your absorb, adjust, or adapt strategy. Ongoing? Set up a recurring calendar reminder to review tariff developments monthly. Subscribe to trade policy newsletters, or designate a team member to monitor changes. This isn't a one-time project. It's an ongoing operational discipline. The businesses that will thrive are those that build tariff awareness into their regular planning cycles. Remember that your competitors are facing the same pressures. The question isn't whether tariffs hurt. They do. The question is whether you respond better than your competition. The small businesses that will emerge stronger from this period are those taking action now, not waiting for clarity that may never come.